Hi everyone, welcome to the next series of tutorial for Spring. In this tutorial, one service will be there, which will be a SpringCloud, and internally we will be calling multiple services like server 1 and server 2. These are built upon Spring Boot application. So there will be a gateway or API. This API gateway will directly call these services internally, and the external world, whoever is calling these services, will go through this API gateway. So let's go to the coding and see how we can create an API gateway of SpringCloud and can call the multiple services using API gateway. So here we are in the STS. We will create a Spring Boot project from here. We'll go to the file, go to the new, and go to the others Spring Starter project. One thing is that you can directly go to the browser and search for spring.starter.io and can create project from there and download it and import in your whatever ID you are using. Other way around is this way, like go to the file and create a Spring Starter project. I will create server. So I will say server A, or make it server A as a caps, and this is demo project for Spring Boot for SpringCloud API gateway. For SpringCloud for API gateway, click on next. I am using Java 7 version. I am using Spring Web because I am going to create a web API and web services and DevTools. That's it. DevTools 5 because we don't need to load the Tomcat every time or start the server every time. If I'm doing any changes, automatically it loads the Spring Boot project. We are using latest Spring Boot version. We can go with this actual released 3.1.5, and we will be using latest Java version also. And finally, we'll go to the next and finish. So if you see the project and if you see the POM file, the things which we have loaded is the web dependency and web services and DevTools to load things at runtime. So these are the things which we are using. Also, if you are going with the latest Spring Boot version, you need to go with latest Java 17 because older version Java will not work. If you are having older version Java, try to change it to 2. something for the Spring Boot version. So in this way, we have onboarded our application, and let's go to the main file, and here we will create a controller. So let's create a controller inside a controller package. So we'll go with controller, and I will change this to server A controller. And finally, this controller will be created. We will annotate it with REST controller. Let's go with the base URL, or let's remove the base URL as of now. I will create a get mapping here. Inside this get mapping, I will create a get API, and I will pass this as server A. And after this server A, I will provide public, and I will return response entity. Inside this response entity, I will be returning string only just to test for the data which we are returning, and I will return get server A data, and it will return new response entity like generally we return in the Spring Boot application. And in this response entity, I will be returning a hard-coded Spring data, and I will pass hard-coded string as data received from server A, and it will return HTTP status as OK, that is 200. So this is how we have created a first server, that is server A. Second thing we require to change is the port number and the application name. So I will write server.port as 8081. So I will create the name of the service. So spring.application name, and let's provide this as server A. And so we have completed our configuration. We have created this server A, in which we have started it on 8081 with this controller as server A data. Make it server A data, and this will return data received from server A. So let's create similar replica and create a new Spring Boot application. I will go to this and create another service. I will name it as server B, and this will be a server B. And after this, I will go to next. I again build the same dependency in this application. So DevTools, web and web services, and I will click on next and finish. After this, Similar kind of controller I require. For this only I will copy the whole data, and in server B I will go, and in this I will create a package, and inside that package I will pass this as controller, and this will be moved in the controller package. So I'll hover over this and move to this package, and similar kind of replica is made. In this is server A controller, make this server B controller. Second thing required to change it to server B, and also data received from server B. So these three things we require. We do the refactoring of name change. So what we have done till now is that we have created a server A. In this server A we have changed the port number and application name. Similar kind of thing I will do in this application also. I will change this to server port 80. We have created server A. That is complete creation we have done. We have created the packages and application.properties we have provided 8081. Similar kind of thing we have done in server B. We have created the controller, and this controller is running on port number 8082 with server name as server B. So this is done, and now what we will be doing is the creation of SpringCloud gateway, in which we will onboard these two ports and this server through that API gateway. So as of now, let's create another package, and I would say Spring Starter package. So it will be a Spring Starter project, and inside this I will provide the server name as, this will be the main server, so this will be Spring API gateway, and this will be the main API gateway which will be acting as a front end or front of the all other services. I'll click on next. Inside this we require dependency of API gateway. So you will see this is API gateway is there. We need this API gateway dependency in our project. Other things we actually don't require, because automatically the dependency is to provide the API gateway, not through any web dependency or other stuff. But let's go with the dev tools. If any changes we will do, that thing will be loaded automatically. We don't require to load the project again. I'll click on next and click on finish. This is API gateway. Inside this is the application. Other thing we don't require. We need to do the configuration on this application.properties. I would suggest change these properties to go to refactor and rename this property to application.yml. So yml file, and this yml file will be writing the configuration of actual API gateway. So I will start this server, and instead of address, let's move it to port. So I am changing this port from this to 8085, make it 8085 as of now. Second thing we require is the configuration of all the two services which we have created, that is server A and server B. So for that I will just write Spring, and after this Spring, not in the ActiveAMQ but cloud, and then comes the gateway. So it will become gateway dot routes. So here it is coming. So gateway dot routes. First out I will be doing will be of ID, that is of server A. Second thing is to provide, after this ID need to provide the URL on which URL server A will be running. So if I go to server A and if I see the application or properties of server A, so it is running on port number 8081. So simply it will be running on the HTTP, because it's my local, so it will be a local host. If you are onboarding on another service or on some other cloud or something, then you need to provide that URL which is actually pointing to server A. So I'll write simply 8081. Why 8081? Because 8081 is the port number of this particular server A. So same server A I provided here with port number 8081. Then comes the third part, is whether any predicates we require to pass or not. If you want to provide any predicates, then you need to provide what all paths you want this to be routed through SpringCloud. In this current context, I don't want any path to be blocked, so all the paths I need to pass it from here. So I'll simply write / and /. So pass all the paths. And here what we'll do, we have created for server A and we'll create it for server B. So I'll just simply paste it one more time and paste it for server B. And server B is this, and it is running on port number 8082. So I'll paste it at 82 here. since we are allocating all the path, it is better to advise that we should go for some specific path. So I'll say server A, and this is going to be for server -b, and this will be the URL which I'll be looking for in server A and server B at port number 82 for server B and 8081 for server A. Now comes the point that in the controller we have not specified request mapping. So let's specify the request mapping for server -a, and in the request mapping of this controller of server B, provide request mapping inside this -server -b. So what we've done is we've created server B and server B controller, server A and server A controller as a request mapping, and changed the path from server A for server A and server B for server B. Server B is running at 8082, server A is running on 8081, and 8085 is the port of my API gateway. Let's minimize this part. Let's minimize this part also. Let's run this, run as Spring Boot application. So as you can see, it has started on port number 8081. Now let's run Spring Boot server B. So run as Spring Boot application. Server B has started on number 8082. Now let's run the API gateway. Run as Spring Boot application, the API gateway. This API gateway will now start on 8085. So all the services are now up and running, 8081 and 8082, and the API gateway as 8085. Now let's open the browser and try to hit the servers which is there. I will open the first of all localhost 8085, then server -a, then server A is there, server A controller, server A is there, which I've already done. Server A data needs to be passed, so I'll pass that server A data. So when I'll hit this, as you can see, data will receive from server A, and it is being called from 8085, which is actually the API gateway in which I am calling this through YML, and internally it is going and calling from server 1 A, that's 8081. Now let's see about server B. Server B is this controller. Server B is server B, then server B data. Similar to this only this is server B, and here also server B. So when I'll hit this, I'm received data from server B. So in this way, what we have received is the data from the two servers, data from server A also and data from server B also. How we have received? We have created the API gateway, Spring API gateway, in which we have internally routed server A and server B and received the data from both the servers. If we want to receive data from multiple servers, then we can just provide in the routes all the server details. Accordingly, we can plan and run all servers through API gateway. This was about Spring API gateway. We will see the details in coming video, that how we can, without the use of YML file, we can execute the code itself, and in the code after creation of bean, we can run the API gateway.